This episode is brought to you by the Command Presence Leadership Institute. Find out more by visiting commandpresence.net.
Welcome to the Faces of Leadership with Michael Warren. Be the leader you wish that you had.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Faces of Leadership podcast, where we believe that leadership is about two things. It's about people and it's about actions. We talk with leaders from across society who are stepping up to do what they can, where they are with what they have. The question is, what can we learn from them? What can we learn from each other to be the leader that we wish we had? Hello, everybody. My name is Michael Warren, and I'm your host. Thank you for being with us today. And folks, as we get started on the episode, I just want to encourage you, if you haven't listened to episode number 9 with Rich Carr, please do so. If you're a parent, if you're a learner, if you're a leader, if you're a human being, you need to listen to what Rich has to say about learning. After listening to that episode, go to the episode page and take a deeper dive. I promise you it will not be a waste of your time. But on to today's episode. Folks, it's somewhat of a milestone as this is our 10th episode. And I think it's proper that we give a huge shout out to Command Presence Training and the Command Presence Leadership Institute for their support in this labor of love. But now, our guest. So our guest today has been a successful law enforcement executive with over 37 years in policing. That's a long time if you're counting at home. A lifelong learner, he is currently pursuing a master's in leadership. He currently serves as the chief of police in the town of Windermere, Florida, where he has led a successful transformation in the agency. He's the former director of the Central Florida Intelligence Exchange and a captain for the Orange County Sheriff's Office Intelligence Unit. He retired after 27 years of service to the agency. During his time there, he served as a high-risk incident commander, the training division captain. He did traffic motors, the DUI divisions, undercover narcotics, tactical operations, and spent 14 years on the SWAT team. And this is the part, folks, that when I met him, this really drew me to him. And all that other stuff was really good, but this stuff right here, he has developed a deep appreciation for the spirit of volunteerism in his local community and its importance to the law enforcement profession. He currently sits on several nonprofit charities, including the West Orange Dream Center, the Iron Men of God Ministries, and the Roper YMC Board, the Michael Callan Scholarship Fund, and the Windermere Police Department Foundation. He works with Sleep in Heavenly Peace, a program that makes and delivers beds to children who don't have them. And as I pause in this introduction for a second, folks, how many of us take for granted that we've got a bed to sleep in? When I read that, when I found out about that, man, it just blew me away that in modern day America, we still have kids that don't have a bed. He is married and has 4 children. In honor of one of his children who lost a battle to a rare neurological disease, his family founded a local charity. His family is actively involved with local charities and nonprofits and has started a ministry called Got Your Six First Responder Ministries, which helps first responders develop a balanced life. They also created a short film to highlight the challenges first responders face. In his free time, and if you're like me, you're wondering what that is, our guest's personal interests include his lifelong dedication to martial arts. This is something you should think about before you try to challenge him to any type of physical confrontation, folks. He holds black belts in multiple disciplines, including a 4th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He has competed across the nation and in Brazil, showcasing his expertise. As a subject matter expert in the use of force, he has taught many classes, and he currently offers a free seminar each month for first responders. Folks, if you could please welcome my good friend, Chief David Ogden. Welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you for having me, Mike. I really appreciate it.
You know what's scary, Chief, is I went through that entire introduction, and it still didn't cover everything. And so I would like to start out, if we could, because it's in such close proximity. You also do some work for the Wind River Ranch What's that all about? What's that charity for?
The ranch itself is actually a family dude ranch in Estes, Colorado. And so people can go take their family there on vacation whenever they want. And it's beautiful up in the top of Estes Mountain. And it has horseback riding, kayaking, mountain biking, all different kinds of stuff. But how I got connected years ago was through a program they call Healing Warriors. So about 5 weeks out of the year, we sponsor military and first responders, and most of the folks are suffering from PTSD or maybe critical injuries in the line of duty, and we sponsor their family to come up there and just bless them with a week of being in the mountains, of having peace and comfort, and having that community just truly love on them. It's a great experience, and I'm blessed to work up there. Actually, in May, we take a bunch of guys up there and we set up the ranch and get it going, and we just work our tails off, which is great because I sit in the office most of the day, right? And I'm not really working hard from physical labor.
There's a difference between being at work and working, right?
It's such a blessing to go up there and just physically work, and your phone doesn't work in the mountains. It's so cool. And that's turned into a ministry. And then in the Healing Warriors program itself, I get an opportunity to come back and speak to the warriors a couple days in the morning, and just doing a quick little Bible study with them, and just talking to them about just having peace in their life, and having spiritual wellness in their life, and what that looks like. Especially, we're seeing a lot of this near the end of your career or after your career. We're seeing so many people having problems and difficulties and challenges leaving this kind of a profession. And it really just kind of hurts my heart to see that.
I've done some work on that side of things, and most of my experience has been on the law enforcement side. And the military gets a lot of well-deserved attention when it comes to PTSD and that type of thing, because God bless the men and women who serve in our nation's military. They do a fantastic job. But in law enforcement, in the first responder world, what we found is that PTSD is rarely the result of a single incident. Sometimes it is. It's the cumulative effect of everything that people see in the profession. And unfortunately, a lot of people aren't formally diagnosed with it until after they've retired from the profession. And then it becomes very difficult for them to get access to resources or support in treating that. And it sounds like this is something that tries to play a part in providing what is needed to those folks.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I see the same thing you do. And I know we're not rolling into kind of a mental health thing here, but we have, we all have post-traumatic stress, and then we have post-traumatic stress injury and then post-traumatic stress disorder. And we'd love to get a hold of that ahead of time, but we are just seeing so much of that, and it breaks my heart. I love what we do in law enforcement. I have a passion for taking care of first responders. And I hate to see somebody who has spent 25, 30, 35, 40 plus years in their career, and at the end of their career feel like they don't have purpose in their life. And it hurts my heart, to be honest with you, to see that, because I think these people are just amazing. And you and I and others on our podcast will know what they've been through, right? Know what they've seen, know what they've done. And I'm like, you deserve a chance at peace at the end of your career.
Peace is an underrated commodity that is often missing in society today. So as we go through our conversation here, I'm going to warn you, we're not going to go chronologically. We're going to kind of bounce around things that are kind of interesting me. So, and please don't take offense to this, but you're not a young guy. Okay. Yeah, for our listeners, if you listen 37 years of experience, there's your first clue, right? Why is it that you're pursuing a degree in leadership? Why at this stage? Why do you think that's important? What is the benefit that you're going to get from going through that process?
Well, I just think we should be in constant learning mode. Number one, you're always learning new things. And look, the fact of the matter is, just like if I relied on what I learned in the police academy so many years ago, it wouldn't work today. So I think to stay ahead of it is really good. And the other thing is, you've heard me say this before, I'm working on what I call rewirement strategy. I started very young at 19 years old. So I'm still kind of young in that game, but I'm older. I've been here. Look, I've had 4 shoulder shoulder surgeries, and in January I had a complete shoulder replacement to prove that. I've got lots of stuff there, but you never stop learning. So my rewirement phase has always been going. I don't just think about it right now. I've been thinking about it my entire career. What am I going to do as I roll out? And we have a succession plan that in here. We've had a succession plan from day one. What am I going to be doing? And I don't like when I hear officers or firemen or anybody that I know say, and we've all heard it, right? I got 2 years, 6 months, 4 hours, 37 minutes till I retire. And then I'll go, well, then what? There's only so many times you can clean your garage. Trust me. Mm-hmm. You're going to have find some kind of a purpose in your life. And I think by a lot of the things that I've chosen to do is have all these ancillary things that I do outside, and a lot of them are nonprofit. I think nonprofit work is such a great leadership tool just to help the community bridge the gap with law enforcement, but also to improve your leadership skill set. So I want to learn as much as I can, and who knows what I'm going to be looking at next. I know I do a lot of keynote, I do a lot of lectures, I do a lot of teaching, but I want to get better at leading nonprofits. I want to get better at all these kind of things. So the pursuit of learning is endless. It never stops.
It shouldn't. And so I want to lean on your experience here just a little bit. When you encounter somebody, and the reality is it doesn't matter if we're talking about the first responder field or somebody's working in the medical field, it doesn't matter. But if their focus is on that retirement date, that's 2 years, 6 months, 12 days, that type of thing, it's kind of like driving, looking just over the hood of your car. It may work okay for a little bit, but what happens when you get to that spot? Then what? And because in an organization, if you have organizational leadership that is doing what they're supposed to do, they are helping to provide and show you the mission, to give you purpose, to give you meaning in what you're doing. And it is a scary thing, to me at least, thinking about living a life without a purpose, without having a reason, a real reason to get up in the morning.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I'm seeing that so much. Again, I'm on that age where a lot of folks have retired already, are retiring, have retired for a couple of years. So I still talk to them a lot, and I go to some retirement parties, and I go to this, and I'm seeing, a couple of years after retirement, people are lost. And I hate to see that, because listen, if you spent 30 years in this career, you have so much talent. And I hate when I hear officers say, I don't know what else I do. All I know how to do is be a cop. I'm like, are you kidding me? All you know how to do is be a cop. You know how to handle domestic violence. You know how to handle community policing. You know how to handle all these things that the general public doesn't know how to do. Down here in Florida, we have 211, 311, 411, all these resources. I'm like, I could take you and put you in a nonprofit center, and you would just be amazing at just the knowledge that you have of helping community members navigate through, all the stuff that we see that we take for granted every single day in law enforcement. So, I get excited about getting an opportunity to talk to law enforcement officers or kind of help them to that end, especially when they're getting ready to retire, and say, hey, what are you going to do? No, you can't just retire. If you want to take 6 months off and, clean your garage and fix your car that you really wanted to, that's fine. But you need to be going and doing something else with purpose in your life. Whether you're making money or not, that's not the issue. The issue is that we all have to have purpose in our life.
With medical technology the way that it is now, the life expectancy for humans has increased over the past few decades. And what often happens is that when we fail to be a leader of ourselves, the leader of one, especially as it relates to our finances, we often fail to prepare for the life expectancy we should be looking to prepare for. And what really breaks my heart is you get somebody who, when I'm done, I'm done. And they retire, and they have this idea about what retirement is going to look like, and it doesn't include work. It doesn't have meaning, and it doesn't have work. And then after about 12 years, they realize, you know what? I'm almost out of money. And so now they're forced to go back into a job market that, because they haven't been, as you said, that constant learning mode, they're out of touch, and they aren't very well qualified for anything. And they just become miserable again because they're working in a job that they have to have rather than they chose to have. and they're doing something they were forced to do simply because they didn't prepare to do anything else.
Yeah, we see that a lot, and it's tough, right? And again, you know these folks and know people, and I don't know how many people that I've seen have left the agency. And, we've all known them. Some people are just kind of cantankerous and I'm leaving. I'm done. I hate this place. And when we were at the sheriff's office, we also had, we did the courthouse. So, and that was like all of a sudden you would hear people make those comments. And then 6 months or a year later, you'd go to the courthouse and you're like, hey, Billy, what are you doing here? And they're kind of back because they hadn't prepared, and it's funny because we're in a job that we have to be prepared, right? We have to plan, we have to prepare. And you said something earlier that's really important. We are so used to taking care of people, but we do not take care of ourselves. It's that old thing on a plane, right? What happens when when the air shoots down, you put it on yourself first and then on your loved ones. I think we need to do a better job of taking care of ourselves and our employees. And man, I really try to emphasize that here with our folks, to have an overall wellness so that they make sure they're taking care of themselves.
I think what you just said is kind of reflected in your quote unquote free time, because one of the things that you do a lot of training in is martial arts. And so taking care of ourselves, there's a physical component to it. And even though we recognize that it's beneficial to us personally, there's a cost associated with that. There's a monetary cost oftentimes associated with it, but there's a time cost as well. But I have to look at it in time frames beyond today. If I invest in my physical health, if I invest in my mental health today, that's going to make me healthier with my family down the road, rather than me breaking down and my family having to care for me.
Yeah, you have got to take care of yourself. Especially, we're used to being leaders, but especially for the men too, and then we got to come home, and if we're not leading our family well, that's not a good thing. I say anytime, if you've ever heard me on a keynote, I will say the same thing every time. I think the greatest gift you can ever give anybody is your time and attention. And the worst thing that you can ever lose in life is trust. So I usually kind of start my presentations off of that. But giving someone your time and attention is really the most valuable thing you can give to people. It's so precious, but that's also for you. Give yourself some time and attention to, and taking care of yourself and physically, find things that you like to do. I used to like to lift weights and do that kind of stuff. I do a little bit of it right now. But for years, I owned my martial arts school for a while, and I would love nothing more than grappling. I teach class, enjoy class, but then roll around with some people on the floor for, 45 minutes or an hour. One of the most exhaustive workouts you can do. But let me tell you what else happens. You're exhausted, and what happens is you end up laying against the mat at the end, right? You're laying against the wall. There's like 20 people in there, and that's where life happens, right? That's where your time and attention happens, because I have had the most amazing conversations, the biggest coaching or mentoring or leadership things or toughest conversations I've had with people sitting on a mat after we've just grappled and tried to beat each other to death for an hour, sweating and exhausted, and say, hey Mike, how you doing today? And you're like, man, my wife's giving me a hard time and this is going on. And then life happens, right? You get to mentor people. I think we need to look at everything as opportunities, as opposed to, hey, I'm going to the gym and working out or whatever. I got to do this. What opportunity sits at the gym? I was at the gym yesterday morning, and I saw somebody I hadn't seen in a while. Pull them aside, and we're talking for 5 minutes. That's me. I'm kind of a catty when it comes to that. But I'll go in there and I'm spending 10 minutes with somebody. I'm like, I got a workout in, but we just also built a relationship with somebody. It's just so amazing. So I don't look at things as like just a workout. Like I'm just going out and pounding 3 miles on a road. I don't run anymore, please. But I never looked at a workout and taking care of myself as that. I looked at it as opportunities to get to build trust with people and build relationships with people.
All right. So then I need to ask you this, because this has always bothered me as, I was never chief. This always bothered me when I was at the bottom of the organizational chart. And as I moved up towards the middle of the organizational chart, we have to, and I think this is especially true of leaders, that we have got to stop looking at those times that you just talked about, those times when life happens, when we just finished hard work and now we've got this 5 or 10 minute window that we can really connect with somebody that has been entrusted to our care. We have got to stop looking at those things as costs and rather as opportunities for investment in that person and investment in that relationship that I have with that person, because that's the very foundation of leadership itself, are those relationships.
It always comes back to personal relationships, right? People feel like you have invested your time and attention, the two things that I said, with them. They're going to go to the ends of the earth for you. We have a small place right here now, and we didn't even get, when I took over the agency, there was significant corruption, lots of stuff that went on. Within the first 30 days, I actually fired my entire command staff and started over from brand new. And we started over with a value-based principle, with creating everything from our goals and objectives and our basic principles, how we're going to lead. But it was all about making sure that we spent time with people. And we had that. And it's probably one of the reasons, when I first took this job, it was a goal of mine to take a job and leave a large agency, come to a small agency, spend about 5 years there, and then maybe I'll move on to a bigger place. But I truly just loved what we had created in the family team that we've created here. And now we have got, I think we've got one of the best teams around. And the people that I get, I don't have a problem picking up people. I have some of the most qualified people that are out there. Backgrounds are just amazing, lots of experience, lots of training, and they want this kind of atmosphere, especially with what we're seeing going on in society, right? The defund and demoralize the police movement that's going on out here. Our folks really don't get to experience that. The community loves them. I think we love. Now, listen, don't get me wrong. We're like a family. We love like a family, and sometimes they fight like a family. We fight like a family. But I've stayed here a lot longer than I imagined I would, just be honest with you, because I love it here. And we've got a great little community, and we've got a great team.
Well, you said something there that took me back a couple episodes, back to the episode with Jameson Peavyhouse. And one of the things that he and I talked about was that it is imperative for a leader to have a deep understanding of the values that I and the agency hold and how they fit into the culture, so that when I hire people, I'm hiring people for the culture. You were just talking about you were brought in to make a change in an organization that needed changing. And in the sports world, you'll often hear about a Major League Baseball manager talking about spring training and said, we're going to get back to basics, catching the ball, fielding it cleanly, throwing the ball, hitting the ball. Those are the type things. But in an organization, if you're a leader, getting back to the basics, trying to have that transformational change that you were talking about, the basics are your values and your principles. What are the things that we have to live no matter what the job or task is that we've been given?
Absolutely. I mean, to this day, every new recruit, matter of fact, tomorrow I'm going to hire a new recruit. Everybody has week zeros, right? Have a couple weeks of week, however you call it. I do 4 hours of team building training with every new recruit that comes here, and they go through the history of this agency. They go through how we established our value statement. What is our vision? What is our mission? And how we want to live and perform as police officers here for this department on that. I know you've heard this before. We all say it, right? Values are verbs. And how do you showcase our values? And that's what's important to me. And the way I show that's important to me is, of course, you support them when they do those things that value our agency. But the other thing that we do is through the promotional process, we support them in that manner. I value, as you know, working in the community and volunteering your time, working in nonprofit organizations. We do a lot of work with the agency. We do a bunk bed build and sleep in heaven police once a year. If you're doing a promotional process in here, you will get extra credit for several things. And some of those are going to be your education. And we've got just about everybody in this agency is either got a higher education or going for their higher education, which is amazing. But you will also get credit for the volunteer hours that you volunteer outside of this agency that you can document. Why? Because I value that. It's important, and they know that. So You've probably taken some testing before in your life. If you want 3 extra points, and that could be a lot. 3 extra points could be a lot.
Especially in a high quality agency where everybody
Absolutely.
is committed to the same values and principles that you're talking about. I want to take you back to a place in your career to kind of build on what you just talked about, your time on the SWAT team at Orange County. I want to talk about it from a leadership perspective, because anytime, no matter what industry you're in, if you're on a specialized team that that you're the one that gets called when things go really, really bad, it's a special kind of person, number one, that's on the team. But I think from a leadership perspective, it's been my experience, you have to be careful that those people don't become so narrowly focused on what they're doing that they lose sight of the larger organizational picture, the larger organizational mission. And so you don't have to address it specifically with SWAT, but with that as a backdrop, how does a leader go about, we'll use the word refocusing members of an elite team? Okay, you just talked about how good your team. How do we ensure that their focus stays on the true mission that allows us to practice our values that we place so highly?
Yeah, that's good. You're talking about clarity of vision, right? All the way from the top to the bottom. And that's exactly the terminology that we use here. And on a SWAT team, I think that was important because I was on a SWAT team, the 10th largest sheriff's office in the country. So you're talking about a big agency. And how do we maintain? And I will probably even tell you, I don't think we probably did as good a job thinking about the values and vision and mission statement. You're talking about that time period for me was in the 90s, through the 90s and early 2000s, where these kind of things were just really coming to light. I was just studying and learning. My first leadership academy stuff was in the 90s. So they were just kind of really getting, what's the mission? What is the vision? What are goals and objectives? How do we write these for law enforcement agencies? So I think that was really just going there. But, I tell people all the time, I've had a lot of names, titles that are assigned, and I try not to get too tied up into that, but one of my most honorable promotions was as a team leader on the Sheriff's Office SWAT team. And we had, I think, one of the best teams in the country. And of course, everybody does. We were host of the International SWAT Roundup and the other things. And we performed about 700 or 800 missions a year, which would be mostly high-risk search warrants, but others. But what's unique on the SWAT team is they do like a lot of military operational teams is that you and I have gone through the testing procedure and tested, and whether we've scored better on a test or an in-basket or an oral board, whatever the case may be, we've done that. But the SWAT team is different. The SWAT team, you get chosen to be, I was assistant team leader, then a team leader by the other team leaders and the team members. And that's one thing I learned about that is, you hear Simon Sinek talks about this, and I talked about it in one of my presentations. It's really important. All our matrices are performance-based metrics, when we take testing procedures. But when you look at somebody going into battle, or when you look at somebody that people follow, it's people who trust, right? So there may be a non-sergeant on a squad who's the true leader, and everybody trusts this guy. Well, that's what the team was saying. I trust you to be my leader. And I've never forgot about that. And I've never forgot the impact that that's had on me, which is why when I came here to the Windermere Police Department, I got to do some other cool things that I wanted to do at Sheriff's Office. Had a little kickback, which was like true mentoring programs, true officer build-out programs, giving people extra credit for the things that we valued, like do your volunteer time at building beds or building a house or I don't care what it is, at your church, whatever. I value those things. And I think those are important because I think those are great. Those are things that make you overall well. It hits your physical, mental, spiritual, and relationship wellness, which I think we're missing. You've probably heard this before, in law enforcement, across the country, there's 51% divorce rate. I saw a statistic about a year ago that said law enforcement was like 70 to 72% for law enforcement. That hurts my heart. And I think this, as leaders, we are scared. And we will talk about, think about it. We'll talk about mental health. We'll talk about physical health. And then we'll try to throw some other things in there, but we will never talk about spiritual wellness. And we won't talk about relationships. If you're going through a bad time with your wife, me as a sergeant, as a supervisor, I want to know that. I don't want to interfere with that, but I want to give you every avenue to succeed, to have a successful relationship. And I want to understand what you're going through mentally, physically, and spiritually. Because, to me, spiritual, and I teach my guys, spiritualness is goodness. What we do in this line of work is good. We are trying to promote good into this community. Now, I personally have a strong faith-based background, but not every one of my people will. But they'll have a strong moral compass background. And I really encourage them to know what that is. But more importantly, I want the supervisor and the leader, and I want to know what that is. Right. So Mike, say if you have a high moral compass and, you like this particular thing, you're going through a tough time. I'm going to come up to you and say, hey, Mike, what's going on? Having a tough time, Chief. Hey, are you doing this? A, B, and C. No, I haven't got a chance. Let's carve out some time. Let's make sure that you get that so that you're performing well. Because I think if you're not happy at home, guess what? You're not happy at work. You're not happy at work. You're probably not happy at home as well. It just all relates together. And I think law enforcement leaders have got to stop being afraid to talk to people about spiritual wellness and relationships.
Yeah, it's not about being nosy. It's about recognizing the context in which my people are working. And here's the reality. The reality is, if you're a true leader, you're going to have a conversation with that person. You just get to make the choice when you're going to have it. Are you going to have it before something bad happens, but because you've got this relationship with this person that something is off kilter? Or would you rather wait until things go off the rails and now you have to have the conversation? You're going to have a conversation. It's just, where do you want to invest the time and the effort as a leader? And if you're a true leader, it's not even really a choice. It's just a recognition that I need to have the conversation now.
A good shepherd knows his flock.
Absolutely.
It's pretty simple. It really pretty simple. And if you don't invest the time in getting to know your folks, and listen, again, I came from the sheriff's office, and I'm not going to tell you that I would expect the sheriff to know all 2,000. No, but you have got to figure out how you spend some time and opportunity. And, this day and age, there's all different kinds of ways of doing that. Again, podcasts, things like this, and sending out emails and videos and all that kind of stuff. But you have got to be able to invest the time, especially in the people that you are influential over. When that pebble hits the water and whatever that influence, that wave hits, you've really got to spend some time and know your folks.
Well, let's go back to the SWAT team for a second. I think that, and I love sports analogies too, because I think that people relate to them. If you have a team, whether it be a SWAT team or whether it be an engineering team or whether it be a sports team, if they're afforded the opportunity, the authority to elect their own captains, their representative, that type of recognition from people that you're peers with on a team is incredibly, incredibly powerful. You mentioned it. If I'm the leader of an organization, though, it's also a great litmus test into the culture of my agency. If my people are allowed to choose these leaders, not necessarily that have rank, but the ones that have significantly more influence and serve as a spokesperson for a group, if I look at those people and they aren't representing what I say the values of my organization are, as a leader, shouldn't I recognize that perhaps I have a much deeper problem than I acknowledged before or even saw before?
Yeah, absolutely. If your values and what you're seeing, if these kind of things aren't matching up, here's my testing procedure, here's all that, but here's who everybody's following. You need to go back and kind of reevaluate what's going on. It's funny. I remember in the early 90s, we had hired somebody at the sheriff's office, and she had all the doctorate degrees and everything else, and came in and was talking about recruiting and hiring. And she got up at a command staff meeting and told us how we were going to go recruit and hire, and we were going to go after people with 4-year degrees and this and that and everything else. And I remember in my head thinking, wow, I'm a big believer in education, but I don't know if, I got my degree after I started in law enforcement. So I kind of raised my hand and I go, I don't know if this is the right way for us to be going. And I said, I'll make you a deal. I said, I think you can probably go to a college and I'll go to the skateboard park and I'll find a kid who's trying to put himself through a couple of years, to your local community college, but, he's paying his way and he's working at the same time and he's willing to jump off a 30-foot roof with a skateboard. And I'm like, I'll find a better cop. than you ever will than somebody and mommy and daddy paid for their 4-year degree and they've never even had somebody talk tough to them one day. So I saw this interesting change in law enforcement at the time. And I think there's some great material out there. And you and I are both, and we love to research and look at things. And I love to take that data, but there's just got to be we're getting around to this whole thing. Leaders have got to kind of recognize the reality of things too. Right. And I was saying, God, you were not recognizing the reality of who we need to be hiring as cops here. And so I think what you're talking about is a leader needs to be able to recognize, oh, here's the natural leader. Here's the leader everybody's following. Let's figure out why.
For
because
good or
those
bad.
are the people we want to be promotion. Yeah. Maybe they don't want to be promoted. That's okay.
It could be, why are they following? Well, the reasons could be good or bad, but as a leader, it's important that I know them. And so you brought up something there. I'm a big believer in education. I like going to
Absolutely.
school. It's just one thing. And so from a leadership perspective, why do we gravitate to those things? And I'll share why I believe we gravitate towards things like, okay, you need this in your background. You need this right here. You need this. And I think we choose things that are easy to measure. They are easy. I mean, it's a checklist. Yep. Oh, we've got to know that's an automatic disqualifier. I tell people that the one thing that I learned in my graduate level statistics class is that you can make numbers say whatever you want by changing a variable here and there. It doesn't mean that they don't have value, but you have to look at everything in context. And Chief, this right here shows the kind of dork I am. I can remember way back to my initial interview to get hired at my agency. I remember that the HR lady says, hey, what's the worst thing that we're going to find on your background? And I said, you're not going to find anything bad in my background. She goes, well, did you get all A's? I said, no, ma'am, I didn't. I said, but I was working 3 jobs to put myself through college. And so when I understand GPA and couple it with these other activities, did I have screw around time? Absolutely, I did. But I didn't have as much as everybody else. From a guy who now sits at the top of an organization, how does a leader keep themselves from measuring the wrong things, from relying too heavily on, in SWAT, if you're in SWAT, relying too heavily on how well someone can shoot or how well or how good their PT scores are? How do we ensure as leaders that we look at those things, but we also have to marry them somehow to our values, and we have to marry them to the mission of the organization?
Yeah, that's good. It goes into what I talk about. It's performance-based metrics, which is always what we test off of, right? It's the easiest thing. You pass a test, you have 100 questions. Whoever gets 100, he gets first promoted. Whoever gets 99 gets second. And at the end of the day, we all know what happens. The guy that he's super, super smart, but usually people have a name for that guy as well. They call him the a-hole.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't like to swear, but that's what they call him because he's not the guy that everybody trusts, right? He may be the guy that, he'll kick Mike out of the way to get what he wants. Well, that's not trust. Well, how do you measure trust? That's always been the most difficult thing, right? What's the performance measure? So I think we actually need more research on how do we come up with ways to measure trust. We intrinsically know that, right? We know who we trust. Well, I'm looking at Mike. People are following him. People are leaning. Mike spends extra time learning the statute. He spends extra time with his recruits he spends a little bit more on this. You know what he does on Sunday afternoons, man? He volunteers over at here. We are looking at all these things. Well, how do we measure? And that's one of the reasons that we kind of add some points to our value system. So I think, and again, I'm not the one with the PhD in research or anything, but yeah, I think we need more clear research studies on that. Right there. How can I measure trust? Because trust is so important. Every leadership school that you will go to, every leadership academy, whether you're going for a 1-day or a 10-week school, you will talk about and you will hammer about trust. Most important thing for a leader in building a team is to build trust. But we don't measure it.
Right. And so in the NFL, the Walter Payton Award is given to the one player in the league who gives the most of themselves to the community, who does things beyond playing on the field. And I think that where leaders struggle is that they don't bother to find out who that is. Kind of surprised to find out some of the stuff that people do. But you know who does know are all their teammates. Not because they're bragging about it, but because they see this person, and that's how you measure trust. Is, that person right there. And I think leaders too often will rely on metrics that can show up in a dashboard. And I'm not against those things. Data should drive a lot of what we do. But if I, as a leader, don't take the time to learn those things about my people, and I in turn reward or award or promote somebody who doesn't demonstrate those type things, then what I have told to the rest of the organization is that those are the actions that I value. Those are the actions in this organization that the organization has said, you do those, you're going to get promoted, you're going to go places.
Yeah, absolutely. And the way you do that, consistency builds excellence, right? You got to be consistent. We're having staff meeting on Monday. And one of the things I have up here, my board for staff meeting is, we're small, so we recognize people immediately and do some things like that. We actually just had some news folks in here the other day. 2 of our folks deployed an AED, literally saved somebody's life. But we do one big award ceremony for the entire, town. We're not that big at the end of the year. But Monday, I have on my checkoff list, guys, who are we going after for these awards? And one of the awards that we have is, unfortunately, March 22nd, 2014, we had our first officer killed in the line of duty here in Windermere. Now, I've had several officers killed in the line of duty. That was the first one in the town of Windermere. So we have an award. He was a great community policing officer, was here, was going to make it through the transition, was probably going to be a future supervisor here. I could imagine that. And I really learned to get to know the guy and love the guy. And it was just amazing. We're close to his family. But we have an award called the Robbie German Award. And it's in honor of him. And it showcases our values about community policing, about honoring other people. How do we honor people? How would he work with integrity? And how do we have service? That's honor, integrity, and service is our three main core motto here. What does that look like? What does that look like when you do that? It looks like one of my officers in a thunderstorm the other day when one of the boats with a kid on it floated back out 50 yards into the lake. Guess what he did? He took off all his stuff in a thunderstorm and walked out there to chest deep water and pulled that boat back in. That's just amazing that he did. The individual the other day that they deployed an AED, shocked him twice, brought him back to life. That's amazing in and of itself. But you know what also they did, Mike? For the next 3 weeks, they called the wife like every other day to see how he was doing. Hey, do you need anything? And they brought his car to him. They provided a level of service that really exalted what we want to be here, that we want to build the trust of the community and the trust of the people. They were in here just the other week when the news was in here to talk about the story. She's like, I just can't believe it, that your officers kept calling me to see how we're doing, what's he's doing, to get an update. And still, it's been almost a month now. And we found out just the other day, he went out and mowed a little bit of the lawn for his first time. And she's like, this is just so amazing that you guys have built a team like this. I have to honor that, right? Honor, integrity, and service, one of our biggest thing. And how do I honor that? But how do I recognize that? And that's through awards and accolades and recognition, which again, later on, you're going to get credit for getting those awards when it comes to promotional exams because you've done these things in the past. You're going to have the Officer of the Year. You're going to get the Robbie German Award, and only one person can get it. So I think these are some ways that we can show some metrics. And I'm encouraged to hear anybody who has some ideas on some better ways, more ways that we can do that, because I'd love to finish out strong.
It's one of those things where I have a discussion with my 2 younger boys, and they're big into sports, and we talk about, hey, you know what? The number of championship rings that a person has isn't really necessarily an indication of how good they were as a player, of how good they were as a teammate. Some are blessed to play on good teams. And, one of my favorite all-time players, Dan Marino. Dan Marino, I think, was one of the finest quarterbacks that ever played in the NFL. But, he came close, but he never had the team around him. He had a great offense, but the defense wasn't always there. And those are things beyond their control. But Dan always seemed to get the best out of the people that he did have that direct connection with. And to me, that's what a leader does, is about getting the best from the people around me, recognizing there are some things that are simply beyond my control.
Yeah, I say it all the time. And again, as I said, I'm in my kind of rewirement phase I'm looking at. And I told everybody last year, hey, probably got 4 or 5 more years left, and let's succession plan. We've already been doing that along. I said, and somebody asked me, what's your idea of success? I'm like, to make others successful. And that's a generic statement. But what does that look like to me? Well, that looks like to me because before I was able to come to this agency, any chief that would leave, there was a huge scramble, all kinds of stuff going on, and they would just go outside and find another chief and everything would be changed. Now, we just had my deputy chief and long-term investigator that I brought aboard, and a sergeant just retired in the last 2 to 2.5 years. Everybody's retired that I brought over to change the culture of the agency. And so for the first time, we promoted everybody from within. Everybody was promoted from within. Then we went through an 8-week leadership training program that I've designed. And now I'm ready kind of in the next couple of years to kind of move on out. My idea of success is that the town manager and commissioners and the mayor, they don't have to go outside. We have raised up the right people to come in here. And Mike, you probably know as well as I do, that happens in big agencies. It doesn't happen in small agencies.
Yes.
It really doesn't happen in small agencies. So that's my idea of success. I walk out this door, everything keeps flowing. As a matter of fact, I told him the other day, they said, Chief, do you know when you're going to leave? I said, I don't know. I said, but my objective is to give up every responsibility I have and for you guys to be doing that. And when that day happens, then it's time for me to walk out the door.
All right, Chief, you're going to find out how big a dork I am right here, right now. Okay. Because I do think that is one of the greatest signs of success as a leader. The mission continues even after you're gone. But I also think it's one of the biggest pitfalls as a leader. And I'm sure you've been around people that have said this, and it's in every industry. I don't care who you are. You get people who they get somebody within an organization that's excited about the job. They're excited about their organization. They're excited about the mission. And you get that person that comes to them and says, this Rayer says, listen, you're way too invested in this. If you leave today, they'll have your job posted tomorrow. What that person has effectively said is that you hold so little value here, we won't even notice when you're gone. And that's devastating to hear from anybody. But if you have a leader that delivers that message, cut it back just a little bit. You're so unimportant. We won't miss you when you're gone. There is nothing that kills morale quicker than that type of statement and creates a cancerous culture than that type of outlook. I want it to go on like when I leave, but I want that to apply to me. When my people leave, I want you to know I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss what you bring to this organization. That's the message I think the leader has to deliver.
It's for them. It's not for you. And we've heard that statement time and time again, right? And I guess in the bigger agencies, there's a little bit of truth to that, but I think there are people that are going to miss you, miss your character, miss the culture. But if you've established that culture in the agency, that's what you're looking at continuing. And honestly, it's a legacy thing. If you're the one that's in charge and you get to, create and establish a new culture, you get to establish a legacy, which is pretty amazing to do.
I just had something come to mind, and I just had to write it down because, my memory also is fading. So I think one of the best ways of describing legacy is impact beyond immediacy. It's that my impact, the value that I have brought, goes beyond my physical presence here. So that when I do move on, that's where you can do it. But we're wrapping things up here. But I think it's important to understand that legacy can both be positive or negative. There are organizations that have a legacy of being underhanded, of cutting corners, seeing what they can get away with. As a leader, perhaps your primary responsibility is ensuring that you're doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason.
Absolutely. Listen, this agency here, had that reputation before I came here, unfortunately. That had a negative legacy, and I truly believe now that we have created a new culture in the agency, and that's the legacy. It's cool if people say, "Oh yeah, I miss you," whatever. Hey, Chief Ogden did a good job. We loved it. Okay, that's all cool. For me, if I was to walk back 2 or 3 years later, and I would definitely come and see the folks or whatever, and that culture is still there. And I have said, I have a friend of mine that visits. He's involved with a couple different agencies, and the greatest compliment he ever gave me one day, he's like, "It's different when I come to your police department." He goes, "It's just different. It just feels like there's a peace here." He goes, and I'm not seeing some of the things that I'm seeing at some of the other agencies, and just the culture and the fighting and even I'll see even the little things like the swearing and the cussing that that we're all used to and accustomed to. And I'm not saying we don't do that. I'm not saying I haven't done it once in a while. You're not going to walk into my agency and experience that. It just doesn't happen. That's creating a culture of excellence, and we've really worked hard to do that here. But again, it was very impressive when I have civilians, and I have citizens a lot will come in and say, "Your guys are just so amazing. They're so kind and they're so good, but they know the job. They know how to do it." So we've created a great culture here, and that's what I want the legacy to be. 10 years down the road, nobody's going to remember you or me or this podcast or anything else, right?
But values are seen in the small things. They're magnified in the small things, in my experience and in my opinion. I just had to go through a certification course for football coaching. And one of the things they had in there was a video, the former Cowboys coach, Jason Garrett. And he was reflecting back on his high school football coach. I'm telling you, he had to pause several times during his speech so he didn't break down. And what he was referring to was he was saying, "Hey, Jason, when you get back here in the pocket, you got to stand tall. You got to stand tall in the pocket." And he goes, but he wasn't just teaching me about football. He was also teaching me that, "Hey, Jason, when things get tough in life and you're facing trials, you got to stand tall. When people around you are doing things they shouldn't be doing, you got to stand tall." That's the kind of impact I think that you and I both are hoping to make. It doesn't matter if they remember my name, and it doesn't matter if they almost cry when they start talking about the stories. The important thing is that their life is a reflection of the values that we had at the time together in that relationship.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And it kind of circles all the way back to what we talked about in the beginning, right? That's purpose. All right, that's purpose in life. Purpose in life isn't to know, hey, I know Chief Dave Ogden, or I know that's not the purpose. The purpose is, hey, yeah, there was a guy here one time, pretty good guy, but man, left this really cool cult. These guys are just still is a good team. This is a good police department. Man, that's leaving a culture.
He took care of us.
And that's having purpose.
It is.
That's your purpose, is to leave a culture.
And there's no greater purpose than taking care of the people that you've been entrusted with. And them, ideally, is like your kids. What we hope our kids are better than we are. And that's what we hope for the people we work with. But Chief, before we close, if it's okay with you, I just kind of want to go with you what my biggest takeaways were from our talk with you, because this is as the editor, you get to say, "Hey, Mike, no, you got that completely wrong." The first thing I took away was that when you said constant learning mode, that one hit me, because if we recognize every opportunity, every situation is an opportunity to learn, and everyone we encounter as a potential teacher, that's how we truly stay in constant learning mode.
Absolutely.
All right. Then you started talking about, and I love the terminology used. I'm in my rewiring stage. It's a recognition that my life is going to change, and I have to rewire. And that's important for people to remember during your career, because if you are aspiring to move up into formal leadership positions, each one of those positions requires a rewiring, because your responsibilities and your perspective has to change.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're all going to get there, right?
Yeah,
Please plan. When I hear this all the time, people are like, "Oh, I'm going to retire about a year or two out. I'll start planning." I'm like, no. You need to start planning retirement well before. Yeah, 5, 10 years out.
Well, it should be part of onboarding, and it should go beyond, hey, we've got this account available to you. No, that's not enough. What does retirement look like? I think that one's good. I loved where we talked about leaders are responsible for showing people the purpose of the organization, but there is an individual responsibility to know your purpose and ensure you have one when you are done with your career.
Absolutely. And again, especially in law enforcement and first responder work, you have so much skill set. Don't ever let the words, oh, I'm just a cop, I don't want to do anything else, or I'm just a fireman. You have a plethora of skill set that is needed in the community.
Absolutely. And continues to bring value to the community if you're willing to share it.
Absolutely.
This part here, values are verbs. And then I added in there that they're more than just words on a wall or on a coin or on a police car or wherever. They are verbs. They are reflected. They are accomplished through action.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not just the actions of our officers, right? It's the actions of the leaders, and recognizing our officers who recognize that you're fulfilling our value system. You want to catch people doing great things, and then you want to reward them and recognize them immediately for that, what they're doing. And that just supports your value system.
From a leadership perspective, and I live by this mantra, and I understand the thought process behind it. Inspect what you expect. And I believe that we have a responsibility as leaders to ensure people are doing things correctly. Where I think we run into issues is, what are our expectations of what we're going to find? Are we expecting to find our people doing things correctly and carrying out the mission and living up to our values? Or are we expecting to be able to catch them doing something wrong? And if I'm expecting the second, that's a leadership problem. That's a failure of leadership. And so, Chief, as we're wrapping it up, I just want to say this. I appreciate people that put their time where their mouth is. It's not enough to preach that volunteering has value. It's not enough to preach to people that we need to be ambassadors in the community, that we need to help the downtrodden, that we need to be each other's brothers or sisters. We are our brothers and sisters keepers. The fact, when you go through and you look at what you're doing beyond what your job requires, it is admirable and it is worthwhile. And I want to thank you for what you do.
Thank you for that. But I tell this to everybody, you can't outserve a great God. And I find this every time I go and get an opportunity to serve others, I get more fulfilled and I find purpose in my life. And that's why I encourage others to do it, because I just know the intrinsic benefit of serving other. This is why our last part of our motto is service. I know what that is. I don't care what you're going through in life. Could be going through some of the toughest things, a divorce, a hardship, cancer. I brought an officer one time who was going through a terrible divorce out to deliver beds. And we deliver beds to kids who don't have beds. And you and I can't imagine that our kids don't have a bed. No. But we've been in those communities, right?
Right.
And the first thing I tell them is, they're not going to know we're cops. Doesn't matter. We're just going to come in. We're going to deliver a bed. We're going to talk to the family. We ask them if there's anything else we can do. And we turn around and walk out the door. It takes us like 30 minutes to do it. And we got done with that day, and this guy had 6 months of hell in his life. And he said, this is the best day I've had in 6 months. That's where resiliency comes in. That's why service is so important. It's so important to be involved in the things outside of your agency, making an impact. And your chief doesn't have to know about it, but I think he may want to know about it. It's important. It's important for your overall wellness and for your spiritual wellness to find that purpose in your life. And I hope and I pray that everybody who has spent a career in law enforcement finds and does that and has a peaceful retirement, whatever that looks like for you. That truly is my prayer for everybody.
Absolutely. And folks, I want to thank our listeners for joining us today. If you enjoyed the episode, and I hope you do, please be Be sure to follow us on your podcast provider. And especially with this episode right here, folks, do me a favor, go to our episode page. Okay, we're going to have links to these charities that we've been talking about. I'm not asking you to donate. I'm not asking you to come and volunteer your time, although we wouldn't say no to either one of those. But I want you to understand that this is what purpose and value looks like. If you take the second and you go and you look at these needs, again, the whole bed thing, that's just one thing. It's so abstract to most people in America that there are people that don't have beds. It is a good wake-up call. Be sure, folks, we referenced several of the previous episodes during this one. You can find this episode and all previous episodes on your favorite podcast provider. You can also find it on our website at commandpresence.net/podcast. Be sure to check us out on LinkedIn. We're working our way onto Instagram and Facebook. And folks, I always close with this line right here. The line is, remember, be the leader you wish you had. I just want to add on today, if you're the leader you wish you had, that's what building a legacy is about. Filling that need that people need, and that's what leadership's all about. Go out there, find the need, fill the need.